Drums and drums! By the center! Quick! March!
Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Welcome back to the Terror of Demons show with co-host and author of the book, Kennedy Hall. Kennedy, how you doing, brother?
Good. Every time I see that intro, it just gives me smiles.
Yep. Thank you, John Machado. He's the editor of Mass of the Ages, episode 3. He's the one who made that intro for us. And yeah, every time I see that, it's let's go to war. So yeah. So Terror of Demons, we're back. We had there was a conference in February. We published a few of the talks, and we're back to our monthly gathering here on the podcast. May 1st is the Feast of St. Joseph and the first Wednesday of May. Joseph against the communists. It's a great feast. It's the only good thing about the 62 missile, in my opinion. Otherwise, it's modernist. Everybody knows that. That was a joke, by the way, just so some people don't understand that joke. Okay, let's talk about our topic. Chesterton, G.K. Chesterton. I'm really happy to talk about this because I'm ashamed to say that I don't know Chesterton as many do. Never read much of him. Don't know much about him myself. But Kennedy, you are speaking at a conference. Tell us about this conference, this event.
Yes, 1st June, because it's in London, England, so we have to say it the way they say it. So 1st June, London, England, Cavendish Square. That's the extent of my knowledge of the geography of London, England. I did go there as a child for like 3 days, actually, but that's another story. It's a Chesterton conference. It's a London Chesterton conference, and it's on the 1st of June, as I said, and it's to celebrate the 150th birthday of G.K. Chesterton. He was born in 1874, as you see there. It's put on in conjunction with Corner Cabinet Magazine, which is a wonderful new British, I guess, does periodical mean every day or every week, or just means often?
I don't know. I think quarterly when you say periodical, but I don't know. Maybe the British probably have something different for that term as well in British English.
Well, it's a magazine that comes out every so often. Which may be periodical, maybe quarterly. And it's a great kind of eclectic mix, very Chestertonian in tone. And they're putting on this event, there's the magazine right there, with the Society of St. Pius X UK and Ireland District. And our mutual friend, Father David Sherry, is the district superior now of the UK and Ireland. He's an Irishman in London, England. And so he is organizing this with Corner Cabinet Magazine, and it's set to be amazing. There's going to be 7 talks, all about 40 minutes or so, and it's going to be an amazing day. There's going to be a social gathering and all those sorts of things. Very intimate setting. Obviously, both men and women. It's not just a men's conference. And we're going to celebrate the glories of Chesterton and celebrate a man's 150th birthday as it should be celebrated. And I'm going to be giving a talk on orthodoxy, which is this book right here. Side note, Ignatius Press does most of the Chesterton books, but I don't know if it's just the website. Maybe it's a different way. If anyone from Ignatius Press sees this or knows this show, I tried to buy it from Ignatius, but the shipping to Canada was like $40 or something like that, because I know they're in San Francisco. I don't know if they have a different option. Maybe there's an Ignatius Canada or something that I couldn't find. So I bought this random copy from because all these books are over, this is published in, I think, 1906. So they're all public domain. Even if somebody owns the estate, the books are just public domain before 1923 is how it works or whatever in the United States. So it's just a copyright 1908. It's just a random copy. It's great, but it was, like $5 on Amazon or something. But you can find his books anywhere. So I'm doing a talk on orthodoxy. Father Sherry is doing a talk on Everlasting Man. There are other fellows as well who are experts on his life and on different works. And the intention of the conference is to be a meeting place for both professed Chestertonians like myself, people who are super Chesterton nerds, to put it properly, and also those who really, they're Catholics. They've heard that they're supposed to like G.K. Chesterton, so what's it all about? So the talks are not going to be academic or scholarly in the sense where, we say a bunch of different quotes and we break them down and we read other citations, and not that. It's not a lecture. We're going to use the Chestertonian wit and Chestertonian method as best we can to present to the audience the thought of Chesterton as it applies to what we experience today in our own words. So it's going to be fun because it's going to be very creative. The people who are presenting have to kind of put their Chesterton caps on and make something entertaining for people. So I'm really, really excited, and not least of which because I get to go to London, England.
Yeah, totally. As I said, I'm not too familiar with Chesterton. I know a lot of memes of Chesterton. He seems to be the most memeable polemicist of the 20th century, perhaps. But I was really struck when I first published your first book, Kennedy, by what I thought was a Chestertonian wit or method, as you say, in your own writing. So first of all, tell me what has Chesterton meant in your own life? How has he influenced you?
Chesterton, by and large, or far and above, I guess is probably the right metaphor, is my favorite author. I don't even know if there's a close second. It's kind of like, who's the greatest athlete of all time in a given sport? Everyone knows who that one is. And even if other people's stats are similar, there's just something about the athlete, and you go, no one's MJ. No one's Wayne Gretzky, et cetera, right? There's other guys who might have as many goals, but they're not the same goals. They didn't score them the same way. And Chesterton is kind of like that for me. I love C.S. Lewis. Obviously, his Anglicanism, he's a little bit limited here and there, but C.S. Lewis was an incredible author in fiction, Narnia and his space trilogy series and things. I do love Hilaire Belloc. I love John Senior as well. But Chesterton is he's probably the most. I'm going to dare and say this. He might be the most complete author of the 20th century, and the reason I say that is because, it's very hard to find an individual who could write the best biographies you'll ever read. I think it was T.S. Eliot who said his biography of Charles Dickens was the best biography anyone's ever written about anyone. That's high praise considering who it's from. And it was amazingly unique the way he wrote it. It's a biography of an author by using the author's work. It's not just, biographical. It's who was Dickens through the writings of Dickens and the different books sort of in chronological format throughout his life, what represented parts of his life. It was just fascinating. He wrote biographies of St. Francis of Assisi and St. Thomas Aquinas. The biography of St. Francis, I think it's comparable to this biography I always talk about here of St. Edmund Campion. There's something about, which was by Evelyn Waugh, who was also another incredible author. He's up there. But there's something about his biography of Francis where it's one of those books where you walk away and you're a different person. Like it does something to your soul. Something has changed in you when you read it. And I also love the way that old authors wrote biographies. We live in a very scholarly age, and I don't mean that as a compliment. Everything is citation, and that's great. Obviously, we want to make sure we're not plagiarizing and so forth. But consistent with this modern method of history, we want receipts. And again, we want to make sure people aren't lying. But when Chesterton opens up his biography of St. Francis, he basically just says, listen, I read St. Bonaventure's, I've read all these other medieval authors about him, and that's where I got the information. And then he just writes the book, and there's no citations. none of it correct. Like no one's ever said, "Oh, you made this up." And Evelyn Waugh's biography of St. Edmund Campion is the same way. It's just everyone knows who knows anything that it's correct, and it's very refreshing because it gives the author more freedom to just write a story. History is a story about someone, and a biography is not supposed to be an obituary or something. It's supposed to be like, what does their life mean, etc. So his biographies are unbelievable. His fiction, one of the major English literary societies has said that his book, The Man Who Was Thursday, which is a spy novel, is the greatest spy novel ever written by anyone. And it wasn't a Catholic association. It was amazing. His Father Brown novels are short stories. You see the different styles. He writes biography. He writes long form fiction. He writes history, and he writes short stories. And short stories are very difficult to write for a novelist because they're a very different type of literature. The Father Brown series is just remarkable. He wrote other fiction such as The Ball and the Cross, which is a fascinating book, not as much read, but very good. He wrote this book here, which I talked about. It's called Orthodoxy, which is very much like a personal autobiography. And the impetus for this book is that he had written a book called Heretics. You see, he was very polemic. I like his style because he calls people heretics when they are. And somehow he did it, though, in a way that made them want to be his friends. So I'm still learning that. But he wrote this series of articles that appeared in some magazine or whatever back in 1906 or something. And at this point, he was only, 32 years old or something, young man. And he basically criticized everyone, Bernard Shaw, H.G. Wells, all the different thinkers of the time that were the who's who in sort of the post-Enlightenment, materialist, rationalist, pantheistic era of English thought, the eugenicists and so forth. And one fella said, well, that's all well and good. You've destroyed all their thoughts, but you haven't presented your own philosophy. So he says, fine, I will. So he wrote a book. And Orthodoxy is essentially how he explains how it was his quest for sanity in a world of insanity that made him a Christian. At the time, he was still an Anglican, but the book is Catholic. And he jokes he converts to Catholicism somewhere around 1920, something like that. And he joked, he said, Orthodoxy was sending people into Rome 12 years or 14 years before I got there myself, because his book was like that. And he just completely destroys in the most... When you read Chesterton, it's like drinking a cup of coffee. It's one of those books you can actually read until the middle of the night and not get sleepy because it's so exciting the way he writes. Anyway, and then Everlasting Man is a talk Father Sherry is doing about that book, and it is my favorite book I've ever read. And what it is, it's a response. It was a response to H.G. Wells's history of H.G. Wells, I think, his history of mankind, and it was a history of mankind without Christ. And Chesterton was basically like, well, that's stupid. You can't write a history of mankind without God. So he wrote The Everlasting Man, and it's a masterpiece. I don't know who else could write it. It's a concise history of mankind starting as far back as we know. And it's Christian, and it culminates with the person of Christ. It goes through all the ancient empires and everything, and it's just absolutely astonishing. And he wrote many other things as well. So I love Chesterton. Reading Chesterton, it's catechetical without you knowing it. Even though he doesn't write like a Thomist, he was a Thomist. And that's why he wrote a biography of St. Thomas Aquinas. He loved St. Thomas Aquinas. And it was about St. Thomas Aquinas' thought, and he understood it very well. And even though the way he writes, it's very prosaic, but he does it in that way that is very sequential, going from sort of, assertion and premise and through the different arguments, and he does the objection thing in real time, and then he has a sort of conclusion and just finishes the thing. And you don't even realize that you're reading philosophy and theology. You just think you're having fun. And, not that it's not, but, and he's just so good. This is one thing before I stop rambling here. You know me, Tim, I'm a little bit of a traditionalist. I don't have many good things to say about the Novus Ordo and so forth, but I guarantee you, if I found a group of folks who were real Chestertonians, and they weren't traditionalists, we could probably still sit down and agree on all of our favorite parts of his work and have a conversation with the same language, because there's just something so special about him.
There you have it. Chesterton, the bridge builder between Kennedy and the world. So one of the thing we named this show Chesterton Model Layman. And I think one of the failures of public Catholic masculinity is a failure of a loss of sort of gentlemanly polemicism, where men can debate with one another. I think that there's this effeminate thing we've talked about where like people get on YouTube and we have these hit pieces against this guy and against that guy, and everybody's going at each other, but it's just not at all a sort of a man-to-man conversation. It's like, let's have a beer and we can duke it out and we can like still be friends, even though you're a heretic and you're a modernist or whatever, sort of this gentlemanliness. What is it about Chesterton that where he has this true polemicism? How can we recapture that?
First of all, I think it's because it's in writing. I mean, he died in 1936. So I don't know if there's any recordings of his voice. There might be somewhere. I don't know. It was sort of, obviously there was radio and things like that. And he was very well known in England. I don't know if there's any recordings of his voice, but it was all in writing. And that's really, really important. Dr. Kwasniewski, he calls the modern Catholic podcaster who's always going after other people, he calls him a theologaster. It's theology podcasting. He calls him a theologaster, emphasis on the gas because it's a lot of hot air. And video theology, the medium is the message, as Marshall McLuhan said, who actually was a Canadian and a devout Catholic, and he converted and died a faithful Catholic. I think he taught at University of Toronto. But anyway, the medium is the message in the sense that there are certain things you can do in certain formats that are adequate for that format or appropriate for it, and there's certain things that are not. You can definitely use YouTube and podcast for certain things really well. Of course you can. Monologues, teaching things, that sort of things. But debate on YouTube I hate it so much. It's like professional wrestling. There's no winner. It's not a real fight. At least in professional wrestling, there's a crowd. This is another thing too, is you're supposed to have an audience when you're debating. Debate in the true sense of real debate needs to be in an audience. You want the audience to be a little bit raucous. The people who are debating must themselves be good orators. That's a big part of it too. And the audience must not expect to have every question answered throughout the debate, because it's a time limit and so forth. So with Chesterton, what he's doing is he's doing this in writing. Now, he did a lot of in-person debates. They're just not recorded. But the thing about writing is also, this is long before the age of instant gratification. Like if someone wrote a book about something, and it was critical of whatever, people would be okay with waiting for 3 years for a response. And they wouldn't think like, why hasn't he responded yet? Is he afraid or whatever? It's like, no, he has to write a book.
He's backing down for the debate.
Yeah, he has to write a book, for goodness sake.
That reminds me of someone else who wrote a book. I think.
Which one?
This one. This book. Yeah.
Well, but seriously, if people said, Kennedy, can you make a video responding to this? I was like, first of all, no, because I have like a life and I have kids and I have, that was when my wife got hurt and all so I had things to do.
Right.
So give me a few months. I did it very fast. It took me about 2 months, but give me some time and I'll do it. And since I've written that book, people will say, oh, so-and-so is now going after the society on YouTube. And it's like, I don't care, like so-and-so can read my book and if it doesn't answer all his questions, then he can write his own book asking me, it's just, this is our age of debate. Again, podcasts are great for a lot of things. They're really useful for a lot of things, but the debate thing, the back and forth hit piece thing, no. And also, this is why the whole recent Catholic Answers AI priest thing, which that did not go over well. And one of the I did a podcast sort of criticizing the whole method of using artificial intelligence, so-called, in this capacity, because given the nature of how important it is to be well-read, patient, prudent, virtuous, really, and in order to understand philosophy. You can't understand philosophy and theology if your life is a train wreck. This is why, sinful men become degenerate philosophers. You want to find all of the wackos who wrote all the strange philosophies like Nietzsche. I mean, the man had real personal life problems with the solitary vice and was just a complete pervert, and no wonder he was insane. He lost his reason, because sin makes you stupid. And so this insistence on these electronic mediums for instant gratification, find an answer, copy and paste, what this really does is it turns us into Protestants. It turns us into, I'm going to find a citation, and the citation's from whatever source I think is a good one, and then I throw that citation at you, and it's like, haha, you're stupid, I win. This is not how Catholicism works. This is not how any sound intellectual thought works, and I think AI just makes it infinitely worse because it literally is your brain, so to speak, and it turns you in. It's like atrophy for your intellect and turns you into an idiot. So I guess that's my long-winded way of saying, with writing and being patient, and for example, these old periodicals, like we're gonna have and OnePeterFive did something similar to this with I guess you could do it online, but you guys did something similar with the SSPX debate and other things. Dr. K's new book, Ultramontanism Tradition. I know he's the editor, not the writer of it. Actually, I have a copy.
Yeah, right. That
Right
is a lot of that is published on OnePeterFive. The debates between on this topic. Yeah,
and imagine these essays. A lot of them are kind of debates with one another, especially between Chessman and Ureta. And imagine if they were having a stupid 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there response thing over a Zoom call on whatever. It would be ridiculous. They had months to formulate their responses, and the best thought was presented. And to be honest, you kind of sympathize with both sides because they had a lot of time to think about it, and they had a lot of time to give concise answers. And I'll tell you, when I wrote SSPX, the defense, I was really annoyed when I started writing it. Not gonna lie, like all the attacks, the Matt Frad thing was just bugging me. So by the time I did third and fourth revision, well, I've cooled off a lot, and then I can put out something that isn't just unnecessarily cantankerous, and that makes you a more respectable interlocutor. And this is just another example of why the written format is necessary for proper debate between confreres or even opponents, really.
Yeah, it's hard to be, if you have a response 6 months later, it's hard to still be angry about that unless you're just driven zealot, I guess. Now, but what was Chesterton? I mean, we've gone over the medium. What was Chesterton's writing? How did he make friends with his enemies and sort of win them over in that sense? How did he do it? What is it about Chesterton that does that?
He was funny. He was really, really funny. Let me just read you I want to read a little thing here because I marked them off earlier. As I said, I'm getting ready for this talk. So let me read this. So he's making fun of H.G. Wells here. Hugely famous author. I think he wrote The Time Machine or whatever. Was that he wrote? Something like that.
All I know is War of the Worlds.
Or the War of the Worlds. Maybe that's different. Where's that Orson Welles?
Oh, is that Orson Welles? I don't know.
Whatever.
I don't know the Welleses.
Some guy. So
no, Orson Welles is in 1984.
No,
anyways.
No, that's not him.
George Orwell. Oh, yes, George Orwell. You're right. I got all the Welleses and the Orwells mixed up. Sorry, guys. Okay, go ahead, Kennedy.
Okay, so this is what I believe is basically if Chesterton could, because I'm writing this modernism book right now, and I'm actually inserting a lot of Chesterton because orthodoxy is basically a catechism against modernism, and here's a paragraph that I wrote in the margin, the marginalia that you do in these books, and I wrote, it's kind of like Chesterton is showing vital imminence destroys religion as such, and why do I think that? So I'll just read it, and you'll actually kind of laugh. So he says, akin to these is the false theory of progress, which maintains that we alter the test instead of trying to pass the test. We often hear it said, for instance, what is right in one age is wrong in another. This is quite reasonable if it means that there is a fixed aim and that certain methods attain at certain times and not at other times. If women, say, desire to be elegant, it may be that they are improved at one time by growing fatter and at another time by growing thinner. But you cannot say that they are improved by ceasing to wish to be elegant and beginning to wish to be oblong. If the standard changes, how can there be improvement, which implies a standard? Nietzsche started a nonsensical idea that men had once sought as good what we now call evil. If it were so, we could not talk of surpassing or even falling short of them. How can you overtake Jones if you walk in the other direction? You cannot discuss whether one people has succeeded more in being miserable than another succeeded in being happy. It would be like discussing whether Milton was more puritanical than a pig is fat. And so, it's a very, very, very profound thing. He's making fun of everybody, but just the way he uses the analogies, it just kind of keeps it light and airy. And I think that's one of the reasons why someone could read that, even if they were a Nietzschean, even if they were a sort of a Miltonian Puritan, just the reference of him and comparing his Puritanism to the fatness of a pig, he's really calling him a pig, but he's not calling him a pig, but he is. But it's okay, and everyone gets it, and it just works. He was a master at that.
So the moral of the story is make jokes about your enemies. Make them laugh. Make them laugh at themselves. They'll allow them to laugh at their own ideas.
If you can't, this is the thing too, it's not worth engaging in debate with somebody who cannot laugh at themselves. If somebody can't laugh at themselves, then they're not really even a human being. There's something wrong about them. You know this from stuff we've talked about and who I've had to debate, whatever. And one of the responsible, but leave it, whatever. But the point is, I kind of used this style in one of my debate things for OnePeterFive, and the response was like, we got him. He can't, right. You can't not take yourself seriously. Or sorry, yeah, you take yourself too seriously. You can't just say, sometimes I'm an idiot. Because of course you are, because you're a human being. And if you're a human being, it means you're necessarily a moron at times. And most of the time you are, more often than not. And that way, when you have that style, only people with a good sense of humor will debate you. And not even just debate, will interact with you. And people who don't have a good sense of humor will not interact with you. And that's good, because you don't want to be around sociopaths. And I'll also say this, in the line of work that we're in, and especially me with all the friend making podcasts I make every day.
Bridge building.
I've had hit pieces on me, and I've reached out and I said, why don't you email me personally? Nope. It's like trying to reach out makes them want to attack me more. And then I just give up, because I'm like, you're not even a human being. You are, but there's something about you where you take yourself so seriously that somebody criticizing your ideas is like they slapped you and made fun of your mother. And you just can't even, and it's so absurd. So I don't know. I don't know if do people have the ability to do that anymore, Tim? Is there anyone out there who can even engage in this kind of thought? I don't even know. I'm not sure.
This reminds me of our mutual friend, Father Charles Murr. He told me, because he was talking to me about his latest book, which is all about the alleged murder of John Paul I and 1970s Vatican. It's just insanely corrupt, and he's just laughing about it. He's like, he's like, oh man, I was living in the time of the saints, 1970s. Yeah. What are you talking about? And then he said to me, he's like, I just don't trust someone who doesn't have a sense of humor. They're not trustworthy. What is it about? It's like something about humility, I think, because when you can laugh, things are not as serious as you think. They are serious, but it's like we can also laugh. It's like I make jokes about the Vatican corruption today when I'm writing at OnePeterFive.
Yeah.
Because if I don't make jokes about it, if I don't laugh about it, I'll cry about it. And if I cry about it, it's because I'm not trusting that God has control over it. So we can just laugh about it because it's just so ridiculous. I'm like, Fernandez, Tucho, heal me with your mouth, Fernandez. It's hilarious.
Smoochy Fernandez.
We gotta laugh about it.
Well,
But yeah, what do you think?
Father
Humor
Murr's
and humility.
Father Murr is a big Chestertonian. We've talked about it at length, me and him, and when I'll send him a text, he'll just respond with like a Chesterton quote. And well, here's the funny thing that I think kind of plays to this. Chesterton says in Orthodoxy, he says, we are on the road to producing a race of men too mentally modest to believe in the multiplication table. They are like children so stupid as to notice nothing paradoxical in the playful assertion that a door is not a door. You know, there's just this complete lack of awareness that people have about the paradoxical spontaneity of life and how you can't explain everything. And that's one thing he hammers home in his book here. I think that's a big part of it. You know, he at the beginning of Orthodoxy, he really shows that one of the quotes that he says is, you know, a man does not go mad building a statue 100 feet high, but he goes mad conceiving of it in inches. You know, he talks about how it's not the poets that go mad. It's the mathematicians that try to fit the entire cosmos into their head that go mad because they're skull cracks. I'm paraphrasing. You know, people today, we are so rationalistic. We are so materialistic, even Catholics, and especially Catholics formed in the, let's call it neoconservative school of apologetics, because they've tried to adopt these methods of modern philosophy and modern scientific inquiry and synthesize the Catholic faith with them. And you know, when was the last time a Catholic apologist? I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but I can't think of when was the last time a Catholic apologist showed how the Catholic faith was beautiful. I mean, maybe it happens, but I mean, like, you know, someone calls into a show or writes a letter or gives a comment on a podcast. Why should I be Catholic? And it's like, well, here's the 17 reasons from the Catechism. It's like, why not? Why not say you should be Catholic because, you know, have you seen a cathedral? You know, you should be Catholic because of Mozart. You should be Catholic because of Palestrina. You should be Catholic because of the Sistine Chapel. I mean, that's the strong, and that's kind of what Chesterton goes off in this book. He says, no matter what philosophy of life, because he starts from an agnostic perspective in his younger days and shows his development. And he basically shows, like, I became at the time Christian, but he was Anglo-Catholic, and then officially a few years later. And he says, you know, I discovered a philosophy that I realized was called Christianity, and that was sanity. And the thing about Christianity that was so sane for him was that we don't have contradictions in the faith, but we have paradoxes. You know, one must die so that he can live. One must descend so he can rise, things like that. Whereas the modern world only sees contradictions, and they try to erase the contradictions, which means they erase everything. You know, the Christian can look at the world and say, I'm a touch of the saint and I'm a touch of the devil. You know, I'm a touch of, whatever. Whereas a modern man needs to explain away sin because he needs to explain away the devil. And he can't let those two things, he can't let sin and virtue, angels and demons coexist. He must erase the one because it's not neat and tidy. And life is not neat and tidy. And in humor and comedy, what is laughter? I mean, laughter is you recognize something that is surprising and incongruous, and it invokes in you a reaction to something that is otherwise absurd. And that's why you laugh. This is why, in a sense, we say that chimpanzees laugh when somebody falls or something like that. This is why a little child, if they're in a high chair, and you know this, Tim, with your kids, you walk across, you pretend to slip a banana and fall on the ground, they laugh. Why? It's not funny that you fell. It's funny that you were walking and then all of a sudden you weren't. That's what's funny. And I think we're so serious. People are so unbelievably serious that they just can't laugh. And when somebody is too serious to laugh, they're too serious to have joy. And if they don't have joy, they can't even really be a Christian. And this is one thing that drives me nuts, these stereotypes people have about traditionalists. You know, I have never had more fun than being around a group of trads. I mean, you've been to the men's conference. Obviously, you have your own community. I mean, all we do is get together, smoke cigars, play sports, drink Maker's Mark, work out, play with our kids, go out for dinner with our wives as couples. I mean, it's like the best life ever. We literally are always having fun. We only know how to, that's all we do is we have fun.
My favorite Belloc poem is where'er the Catholic sun doth shine, there's always laughter and good red wine. At least I have always thought it so. Benedicamus Domino.
Domino, exactly. And that's and that's it, and anyway, that's just so Chesterton is, when we say model layman, maybe he'll be canonized one day, maybe not. Who knows? I mean, we don't want him to be canonized by committee in the sense of, the sense everyone born after 1948 is canonized if they're Catholic or whatever. We don't want that. But whether or not he's canonized, his life is indicative of, I mean, he was involved in very heavy stuff. He did a lot of work against eugenics. It was really coming to a head in England around the time of World War I. And actually, Winston Churchill was at the forefront of trying to get eugenics underway as a young politician. And Chesterton, the approach that he took to make people see eugenics as being wrong was not, again, it wasn't the rationalist, serious approach. It was making jokes about it, It's kind of like Charles Coulomb will say on his show with Vincent Franchini. And it was like, those who advocate for population control seem to never think that they're the overpopulate, that they themselves are the excess population, Call it what it is, boys. You want to off the poor, You want to get rid of handicapped people because you don't like them. Stop pretending it's about the environment, because if you could easily just get rid of yourself, but you won't do that. So just shut up, And that's how he would talk to people. It's stronger. It's like what drives me mad when you watch politics, which is a penance in and of itself, and you see these conservatives trying to explain. Maybe it happens here. I don't know if it happens as much in the States, but the liberals will hurl, environmentalism, whatever. And they're like, no, you don't understand. Conservatives are the best at helping the environment and the economy. It's like, why are you even accepting their premise? Why don't you just say it like it is? Tell the liberal that he is a Moloch worshiper and he hates people. He wants less of them and he doesn't like babies. That's what it is. He could just, we're not advocating for this at OnePeterFive, but if he really wanted to, he could kill himself, but he's not going to do that. And we don't want him to. So stop trying to get other people to kill their children or not have them just because you would like to still be able to, have your cottage in the summer. Get rid of your cottage, sell everything. It's like, just put your money where their mouth is. People should stop accepting these premises and just start making fun of people. There's nothing wrong with ridicule. We obviously don't hurl ridiculous insults and call people names, calumnious and so forth. But if you're in a battle, you have to swing your sword. And if the proper sword to swing is that of ridicule, then go for it. And that's another thing too, is people can't do that today. They don't know how to properly insult like a gentleman, and they don't know how to be insulted. Anyway, that's
they can't. Yeah, they can't take a punch, can't throw a punch. We got about 5 more minutes left. Any other passages of orthodoxy or Chesterton you want to read and comment on?
Well, I'll just start at page 1, and there's only about 160 pages, so we'll be here for about 4 or 5 more hours. Okay.
Audiobooks by Kennedy Hall. Get your audiobooks below. Click on the link
below.
KennedyHall.ca, I believe.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that's true. Okay, so here are 2 passages I'll read. One of them destroys evolution as a thought, and one of them destroys nominalism. This is why I think orthodoxy is an antidote to modernism, and that's why I'm citing so much of this in my book on modernism. It's just like they're tailor-made. So this is from chapter 4, I think. Chapter 3. It's called The Suicide of Thought. Anyway, it says, evolution is a good example of that modern intelligence which, if it destroys anything, destroys itself. Evolution is either an innocent scientific description of how certain earthly things came about, or if it is anything more than this, it is an attack upon thought itself. If evolution destroys anything, it does not destroy religion, but rationalism. If evolution simply means that a positive thing called an ape turned very slowly into a positive thing called a man, then it is stingless for the most orthodox, for a personal God might just as well do things slowly as quickly, especially if, like the Christian God, he were outside time. But if it means anything more, It means that there is no such thing as an ape to change, and no such thing as a man for him to change into. It means that there is no such thing as a thing. At best, there is only one thing, and that is a flux of everything and anything. This is an attack not upon the faith, but upon the mind. You cannot think if there are no things to think about. You cannot think if you are not separate from the subject of thought. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. The philosophic evolutionist reverses and negatives the epigram. He says, I am not, therefore I cannot think. That's him on evolution. And he's not accepting, he doesn't actually like evolution as a physical theory, but he was just trying to show it's never just about the physical. It's based in a metaphysical. And this is the last paragraph I'll read before we sign off here. And this is on nominalism. And here's what he says. Well, he doesn't say it's a nominalism, but that's what it's about. He says, then there is the opposite attack on thought, that urged by Mr. H.G. Wells when he insists that urged by Mr. H.G. Wells when he insists that every separate thing is unique and there are no categories at all. That's nominalism. This is also merely destructive. Thinking means connecting things and stops if they cannot be connected. It need hardly be said that this skepticism forbidding thought necessarily forbids speech. A man cannot open his mouth without contradicting it. Thus, when Mr. Wells says, as he did somewhere, all chairs are quite different, he utters not merely a misstatement, but a contradiction in terms. If all chairs were quite different, you could not call them all chairs. And it's just pithy. And it's true. If nominalism is true, then nominalism doesn't exist. Because nominalism is a thing that is defined and has a nature which don't exist. So just shut up and go sit in a hole in the wall and don't ever say anything again because you're going to be in a rubber room because you're blabbering nonsense. This is why he's the apostle of common sense. We could go on, Tim, but I'm going to be boring people soon.
Every nominalism is unique. I don't know. Excellent. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Chesterton, model layman. Go to cornercabinet.com. Subscribe to the Corner Cabinet. Attend the event if you're in London or in the British Isles. Kennedy, anything else you want to promote at kennedyhall.ca? What's going on with you?
I have started releasing, you can go to kennedyhall.ca. That's got my everything, but most of my work now, like my Substack is linked there, but if you just go to Substack and you just look up Mere Tradition, it's meretradition.substack.com. A play on one of my other favorite authors, C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. In any case, I do a lot of stuff there that is sort of like some is free, some is behind a paywall. I've started doing podcasts and sort of the first 20 minutes. Yes, if you go to kennedyhall.ca, you just click the different things there. You just sort of click on them and whatever, you'll get things. And but on my Substack at meretradition.substack.com, which is right there. I think you got it. Yeah. You can go in. No thanks. And then, so today I did one called Nova Soto Nightmare. It was about a dream I had, by the way. I'm not just being a jerk. And yesterday I did one on modesty, and some of these are for paid subscribers. Some of them, there's a portion for free, and a lot of it is free. And it's just a way of keeping up with the stuff that I do. And people are liking it. There's, about 2,000, almost 2,000 subscribers now and stuff, and it's going really well. So that's where a lot of my work will be done. And if people do sign up, I'm going to be writing another book after my modernism book, and I'll be releasing the chapters to paid subscribers over the time period that I write it, and they'll sort of get a sneak peek. So there you go.
Excellent. So everybody subscribe to kennedyhall.ca, subscribe to the Substack and all that good stuff. While you're at it, go to OnePeterFive.com/crusade. Join the lay fidelity, this is where it's all about. So with that, we'll sign off. Wish everyone a happy month of May, month of Mary. I love that once again, St. Joseph against the communists begins the whole month of Mary. It's great. Mm-hmm. Joseph comes in front to take care of Mary. It's beautiful. All right, everybody. God bless. Have a good month of May.